Now, how do you think Palestine could best reach some sort of binding agreement with Israel? Meaning, like, what sort of moves could the government be making? How could they be doing X, Y, and Z better? Any of that's on the table. Now, I know we were arguing about Hamas's legitimacy earlier. Now would be the time to bring that up versus earlier when we were trying to talk about Israel. Yeah. So we're gonna start with intros. We'll just do Noah, Olivia, Oliver again. We'll just do it that way.
Okay, sounds good. I guess I will feel like it kind of just makes sense to continue on from where we're going from Oliver's closing. I don't think anyone here thinks that it sees Israel as a baby that is a perpetual victim that is barely fighting to survive. At least I wasn't alive when people had that view, so I never had that view. But what I do see is that Hamas is absolutely relevant to this discussion, just as much as the Israeli government is relevant to this discussion. Hamas is the Palestinian government. And just like Netanyahu is a problem, Hamas is a problem. And since Hamas's inception, and especially since they gained power and control of Gaza, they have perpetually fired rockets every year, thousands and thousands at Israel, continuously. And any time that there's a ceasefire, Hamas will still fire rockets, and from civilian locations. And there cannot be peace while that's happening. There simply just cannot. That has to stop for there to possibly be a peaceful two-state solution. I know Olivia is not interested in a two-state solution, but I think Oliver is, and if there's going to be a two-state solution, Hamas has to stop firing rockets continuously, over and over, thousands every year, from civilian locations, and otherwise, I don't see any possible path to peace. That has to stop.
Okay, Olivia.
Okay, so I'm just going to make sure. So the topic is, how can Palestine reach a binding agreement with Israel?
Yeah, like how could they best do it, like diplomatically or whatever, assuming everyone's functioning optimally, maybe, or like what could they do better, or X, Y, or Z.
I think Oliver said it best when he said that all the cards are basically in Israel's court here. I think Palestine as like a state is not entirely functional. I disagree with labeling Hamas as their government. I would call it just as fucking rogue as Israel's government. But honestly, I think what the Palestinians are doing with showing what is going on the ground the moment it happens, and before propaganda can take hold, and letting people see it through their perspective before the media can put their spin on it, has been incredibly efficient. I think that that's the only reason that we had that temporary ceasefire, because if the rest of the world is focusing on Palestine, during the holidays, then our economy is at risk, and nobody wants the economy to hurt. And so I think the Palestinian people are already doing everything that they absolutely can. I disagree with calling Hamas their government, especially because the last time there was an election was, 2004, 2005, maybe 2006, like years ago. And anyone 17 and under in that election could not vote. So anyone over 34 in Israel has never voted for the people you claim represent them. And that's just not fair, At least we get to vote here and then say our government doesn't represent us. I think Palestine Yeah, I think they've done everything they can. And I think that the rockets don't really come into the equation when that there's an Iron Dome that easily gets rid of the vast majority of them. I don't think homemade rockets are even valid to talk about at this point when we're dropping 750-pound dumb bombs, unguided bombs, on the population of Palestine. And even worse, 2,000-pound bombs. Like, these are not things that we made to even be used on civilian populations, but we're completely fine with Israel doing it to the Palestinians. I think putting as much economic pressure as possible is what Palestine can do.
Oliver.
All you, Oliver.
Sorry, I'm like super congested. Alright, so Hamas is smoking crack. They really think that they can have it from the river to the sea. I don't. Maybe I'm wrong. Alright, but
Hold on. I just want to be super clear. You said Hamas is smoking crack, not I'm also smoking crack. Okay.
No, I didn't say I'm smoking crack.
Okay, we all heard that.
Give me a second while I light up my crack pipe. Yeah, that's what I think doing. I mean, I don't know. I don't think. I guess okay. I want to preface this by saying this is not a unique phenomenon to Hamas, right? Like, organizations the world around, they oftentimes do things that are completely irrational, right? Things that make absolutely no sense. And that is exacerbated by these kinds of conflicts. For example, Benjamin Netanyahu's regime just continuing to annex Palestinian land in the West Bank. You know, I mean, what kind of solution is that really going towards? How is that not just fueling more violence? I mean, there's a very obvious goal behind that, which is, you know, everything I stated in my last outro. But the thing that I don't think Hamas appreciates that they're absolutely playing into Israel's hands with that. Yeah, like, you know, when you do things like October 7th, you reaffirm in Israelis' minds that there can be no peace. And I'm not saying that what Israel has been doing has been justified. What Israel has done has been absolutely horrendous. It was not a targeted attack. It has been war crimes. It has been crimes against humanity. It has been collective punishment, domicide, and, you know, just not at all targeted. I mean, now there's actually a ground invasion. But, you know, what led up to that? I mean, come on. But I don't think Hamas having this consistent strategy of, you know, playing, you know, this ridiculous game of shoot rockets from a civilian area, get hit back, publicize the casualties. I don't think, like, this is not pushing Israel towards a peaceful mentality. This is not making moderate Israelis see the light. This is, and specifically, these attacks, they're not even targeted on settlers. These are not targeted in the West Bank. This is like Western Israel, you know, rockets at Tel Aviv, Ashkelon, Ashdod, you know, the kibbutzes near Gaza. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And, you know, yeah, if Israel wanted to be a real partner towards peace, I think that Israel always knew that Hamas was this kind of organization on some level. I think Israel letting them remain in power for a long time was in bad faith. Back when Hamas tried, you know, and successfully booted Fatah and the PA from Gaza, Israel, it seems, didn't really put its hand on the scale and say, no, you can't overthrow democracy here. Israel didn't do that. Why? We have to ask ourselves, why is that, right? And it's clear, right? We have two parties here who see that, like, we have certain elements within the Israeli political leadership.
Isaiah, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up.
Okay.
Yeah, just 2 sentences.
I'll be quick. we have certain elements within the Israeli political leadership who see this as a zero-sum game, and we have certain elements within Hamas, or Hamas as an organization, who also see it as a zero-sum game, and they've practically shaken on the conclusion. It's just ridiculous. It's, we both agree. Okay, we both agree this is a zero-sum game. Bet. Let's do this. It's just madness. All right, yeah. Sorry, I'm done ranting.
Okay, I guess I'll jump in. I hear some of the points you're making. I'm not sure that Israel has annexed any of the West Bank. They've allowed settlements there, and that's wrong. And they should forcibly withdraw Israeli citizens from that area. But they haven't annexed the West Bank, as far as I'm aware, or portions of the West Bank. So I'm not exactly sure where that's coming from. But regardless of the horrible shit that's going on there, the position that Olivia took, that it's not fair to call Hamas the government of Gaza, I don't really understand that. I mean, I can understand the position, say they're not really legitimately the government because they're not holding elections, but neither is the PA. They're not holding elections either. And Hamas runs and controls the infrastructure of Gaza. They absolutely do. They control all the governmental functions and organs, and they are the active government in the region, whether we like it or not. Just like Netanyahu and the Likud party is the active controlling government in Israel, whether we like it or not. And so those are the groups we have to center the leadership around, because they're calling the shots, unfortunately, and the shots aren't good. But yeah, I don't know if Oliver or Olivia wants to respond to either of those points, or we could move on to some of their other points they made.
Yeah, so I would like to start by saying that the pattern of settlements has actually created essentially land annexation, right? Like, you have settlers who basically threaten Palestinians with violence if they try to return to certain olive fields. That's nothing but annexation. From what I understand,
Piecewise annexation.
Huh? Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Little by little.
Yeah, piecemeal. Exactly. Yeah, no, but they're totally annexing it piecemeal. I mean, there's just more and more checkpoints, more and more restricted movement, and more olive.
Just to wrap it up, so we're not getting, again, not a definitional thing. It's functionally an annexation, even though it's not legally an annexation.
Yeah, sure. I agree, but I mean, yeah, like, it's ridiculous. It's also my impression, and maybe I'm wrong about this, I've only read a little bit into it, but it seems that Israel has functionally annexed the Jordan Valley, which is some of the most fertile land in the West Bank as well. I had more to say, but I already forgot. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's hard to keep track of all of it.
I hear your point on the the functionality of it. I'm what's the word? I'm open to that idea. And yeah, I think the settlers need to be absolutely removed.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just I was wondering if you meant literally that like Israel was claiming it as its territory, which I'm not aware of that happening. But yeah, they should be evacuated forcibly if must be, and that's the only possible way for peace. Absolutely agree with you.
The idea clearly.
I would just say that Israel is not officially annexing it, but I think that they are doing everything right up until that point, including arming the settlers and giving great health care to the people out in the settlements, sometimes better health care than the heart of Israel actually gets. So I do think that it may not be their official policy on paper, but it's very clear that their actions are effectively annexing the West Bank.
Yep, I think that's a fair characterization. I mean, when you try to go to your family's olive fields that you've had for generations, and all of a sudden you find some trees chopped down and there's a trailer there and there's some settlers who threaten, your well-being or your life even, if you try to go back to that, I mean, what is that other than annexation, right? But anyway, sorry, not trying to debate the definition here. But going back to, do you mind if I go back to the whole Hamas thing? So, their leadership has stated that the intention of this, well, I don't know if this was true or not. Well, okay, I don't know if this was really the intention or not, but their leadership has definitely stated that the intention of October 7th was to do something so egregious that it would ignite a regional war. And I do think that it's my opinion that when Ismail Haniyeh said that that's what they were trying to do, I think he is saying that truthfully. I think that is what they were trying to do on some level. I think they were, I don't know. It just seems like absolute craziness, because it's like, okay, how many wars has Israel won against neighboring states before, back when Israel didn't have anything, right? Back when, I mean, if we're talking about 1948, for example, the Nakba, the Israeli War of Independence, it was a bunch of ragtag settlers with old Czechoslovakian weapons against, Arab militaries from every single state surrounding Israel and Palestine, and Israel basically won that war and every consecutive war. So it just seems absolutely ridiculous to this call for the destruction of Israel. It just seems to be a call for indefinite violence. And it just plays into the Israeli right wing's hand and allows them to steal more land.
Okay, so I'm going to address two of your guys' points at once, because I think that's a great way to come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
I agree that you have to deal with Hamas, since all of the government organizations are run by them. I still think it's a cop-out to call them the government of the Palestinian people, more so than any other place. Because, it's been years. It's been an actual generation since they have gotten to vote.
Yep.
And I also completely agree that the actions Hamas takes often gets in the way of a peaceful resolution taking effect. With the rockets, they launch them towards Tel Aviv, they launch them towards civilian populations. Part of that because, they're not really... Yeah, the settlements, they know they're not going to win there. And it is just a show of force most of the time. And while I see from one side the need to have a show of force, for example, let me backtrack a little bit. When I first heard about October 7th, when I first heard about the attack, I heard about it with the name Al-Aqsa Flood from most Arabic-speaking sources. And it was very clear at the time that it was, at least at the start, meant as a show of force, as like a real show of force against all of the massacres that had been happening at Al-Aqsa Mosque, one of the most holy sites for Islam. And while I fully comprehend that was a show of force, I disagree with that, I don't think that it was the right solution. I don't think it was the right form of action to take. I do think that hurts the cause. But at the same time, with those rockets launching towards Tel Aviv and the attack that happened, it's absolutely atrocious that you would ever think about harming civilians. But just the fact of wanting to break down a wall and getting to the other side and attacking military targets, I don't disagree with that. And I think that the actions they took caused the world to pay attention. They forced the world to pay attention, I should say. I told some of my friends yesterday that I think the rest of the world is just waking up to the fact that they don't actually care about people. And I think that this attack on October 7th proved that. Because the situation for the Palestinians truly was not any different. Maybe the scale is larger, and maybe it is now moving faster, but this is always what the Palestinian people have had to endure. And I think the only thing that Hamas has done extremely effectively is waking up the world to the fact that, oh, they need to pay attention. And while Hamas is generally ineffective, that worked. Military analysts all over agree that that worked. And that Hamas has actually accomplished more of their military objectives than Israel has. And that's just embarrassing, For a country that we fund so much of their military, for a country that we are so invested in, that's just embarrassing all around. And so Hamas, no one is absolving them of their crimes, and no one is saying they're this innocent party. But at the same time, I'm not going to police the way the oppressed fight back against their oppressors, especially when, in my life, this is the only time I've ever heard regular people speaking up about this. And I don't think that would have happened before October 7th.
Okay.
I think you're right that...
Oh, I was going to say, both, anybody who wants to respond to that, respond,
okay.
And then we got to wrap it up.
Yeah, I think that you're right that it brought, the world's attention to the issue. But when the clear intention of it was to do something so egregious that it would elicit an insane response from Israel, thus sacrificing however many of your own people from what Israel will do in response. I mean, just insane. I don't know.
It is insane, but at the same time, it feels like blaming the victims for the response of the abuser. Why is no one surprised that is how Israel reacted? Why can Hamas be so right about the fact that, we attack them once, they're going to carpet bomb us for days on end? Why is that true? Why are we okay with that?
Well, I don't think anyone, at least here, is okay with it. But, the reason why it's not surprising is because Hamas openly, admittedly, and bragging at times, operates and fires its weapons from civilian areas. They knew Israel would fire into civilian areas because that's where they're operating. They knew that was going to happen, and they wanted that to happen. And they've been leveraging their own civilian deaths that they knew would happen in response to their attack. I agree to the point that, yes, they knew this was coming, but it's because they're firing their rockets from those areas that resulted in civilians dying. And so, I guess you could say, Israel, let them attack you, don't fire where they're firing from. But I don't think any other country would be held to that standard.
No, so I think leveraging civilian deaths would be using 1,400, which has been adjusted.
Lost you at 1,400.
Hello? Okay, so the 1,400 number, even though it has been adjusted, you say that Hamas uses civilians, but I would argue that Israel is using civilian casualties as their justification for this, because in response to believing 1,400 people were killed, they started a carpet bombing campaign on Gaza. Every single area in Gaza is a population of civilians. Every single one. It is 100 square mile piece of land that is the most densely populated area in the world. So
2.3
everywhere there are civilians. Yes. I think it's just a convenient excuse when you say, well, Hamas fired from there, especially when we got a report today saying that there is no proof that Hamas was operating from the hospitals that Israel bombed, claiming they were Hamas centers. I think it's lazy to say that, well, Hamas operating from civilian areas means every civilian in there should pay the ultimate price for it. I think Israel should just suck it the fuck up and do the right thing and send their ground troops in and use special operations and actual targeted military attacks to get rid of their enemy. If Hamas is truly the enemy, get rid of them, But if you're going to land grab and you're going to carpet bomb, it's not about Hamas. Like, even if Hamas is a problem, it's not about Hamas.
I have a response, but Oliver, if you want to go, you're welcome to go.
We have to wrap it up. Well, I
Okay,
don't
okay.
want you guys to be
Okay,
up
we
till
can wrap it up. It's
Just
fine.
wrap up in our outros.
Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah.
god.
Yeah.
I mean,
So yeah, we'll do 2 minutes of outros for everyone, and we have to wrap this up because otherwise you guys are gonna be up till like 12 doing this. I can see Noah fading right now as we speak.
we could do part 2 or something.
We
I don't
could-
know, or not.
We could all listen.
Always down.
This is content for me. Okay, I didn't have to do anything. Okay, and since you guys are respectful, I'm barely moderating. Really, I'm just keeping track of time. So, okay, so let's go. Yeah, Noah, Olivia, Oliver, as normal.
Okay, great. Okay, where do I even start? Okay, so I know in that last comment this wasn't made, but I want to go back to a comment on Israel has an Iron Dome, so they should not worry about Hamas rockets. I don't think that's a legitimate criticism. That Israel uses its resources to defend its people, therefore they should tolerate continuous rocket attacks against them. I think that's nonsense. Comparing the number of people killed, I don't think that's legitimate. I don't think saying just because Israel has more power, they shouldn't be able to defend itself. And 3, this idea that Israel just sends special ops, take out Hamas. I mean, I don't think it works that way. I think you can't just send a group of elite soldiers into a city region with a large network of Hamas operatives, tens of thousands, and just say take them out. I mean, I don't think that's legitimate. I don't think any government would take that military strategy. Maybe I'm wrong, and we can come back and discuss military strategy. But from my understanding, that's not a reasonable military strategy. I think Israel has been definitely at times far too aggressive. But I also think Israel has been more selective in its targets than most nations in history would have ever been. We have far less dense bombing campaigns that resulted in far more casualties in far less time. You can look at the bombing of Dresden by the Allies, 30,000 people killed, civilians killed in 2 days. Bombing of Tokyo, 100,000 people killed in 2 days. Though that's true indiscriminate bombing. Israel, while Israel goes way too far, the numbers aren't like that. They often use roof knocks, robocalls, etc. It's not enough. They need to be pushed to do more. But to say that they're just firing at any civilian they can see is just not true.
Okay, Olivia.
Okay. So, try to remember all your points and address them. I'm not saying Israel shouldn't defend itself. Absolutely use the Iron Dome. But let's not pretend that the rockets coming out of Palestine and the munitions dropped on Gaza are anywhere near the same level. I think it's disingenuous to pretend that they're using roof knocks and robocalls when on October 7th they shut off electricity, they shut off food, and they shut off water from entering Gaza. And I am constantly seeing people post about the fact that they were not warned before the airstrikes happened. I am seeing the people in Gaza say this. So I don't believe Israel when it's saying it's trying to do everything in its power to protect civilians, to get them out of the way. You know, they are using AI, and I'm sorry we didn't address this in the topic, but they're using AI to pick these military targets, and they know full well how many civilians, how many casualties are going to be a part of that airstrike, and they're doing it anyway. So it is indiscriminate, and I think it's silly saying we shouldn't get wrapped up in the numbers, but then immediately start talking about the bombing of Dresden. Like, you know, this is an atrocity, and I think we should focus on that. And I don't think that the speed at which Israel kills Palestinians should be the focus. You know, people are dying, and I think that it shouldn't be that hard to say that Israel needs to stop that and adjust its tactics, because its current tactics are not working. You're saying tens of thousands of Hamas soldiers, but like the numbers, they don't make sense. Why, like, so many of the casualties are civilians. Where are the numbers of Hamas that are killed? How is this the most efficient way to go about this? It's absolutely not. And I think that there's just so much propaganda convincing you that like this is the only thing that Israel can do, when it truly is not. I think it's actually extremely racist to wrap up. I think it's extremely racist to pretend that Israelis can't go in and find where Hamas is, especially because they have this AI and especially because they have such a highly sophisticated intelligence network. And so I think Israel can do better. I think it's easy to hold them to a higher standard.
All right, Oliver. Let's take us home.
You guys already spoke on the military strategy part. And I guess I want to preface this by saying I don't think any of us are military experts in one way or another, but yeah, I would say on one hand it's clear that Israel hasn't been as indiscriminate as some militaries have historically been, like Russia and Mariupol or these kinds of things, but has been significantly more indiscriminate than it should have been, that it has in fact committed crimes against humanity, and its military response was completely out of proportion. And that, even, how do I put this? I also agree that talk of how proportionate or disproportionate the response was obfuscates the fact that prior to this conflict, or I should say prior to the current iteration of the conflict, Israel has not done everything it should have done to unilaterally work towards peace, seeing as Israel holds the cards. And I think that, I don't know, it's funny, before October 7th, it was kind of always my assessment that, like, okay, I mean, if Israel really works towards peace and Israel really starts dismantling settlements and this, that, and the other, and, actually starts working with the PA and, tries to actually work towards this two-state solution, and that's going well, and Hamas is still a problem after all of that, well, shit. I guess you got to do something about them. But, to me, I don't know. I don't want to say one thing or another, but it just seems completely ridiculous that the conflict ever even got to this point in the first place. Yeah.
All right. We're going to move on to our next topic,